Welcome back, everyone, to the organic dry bean production course. Looks like people are still joining us into the meeting, so I'll do the quick. It's bean time. I love it. Love the enthusiasm of this group. So thank you, everyone, for turning out for each webinar. It's been great having you all. And just if this is your first one today, you're coming into the organic dry bean production course. This course is being brought to you through our collaborative EcoBean project, which is, again, a collaboration between the University of Vermont, Cornell University, the University of Maine, and the University of Wisconsin. Our EcoBean project is funded through the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture through the Organic Research and Education Initiative. And our team of researchers and extension and students have been busy both researching answers to your questions, but also creating lots of outreach material, one of them being this course, to help folks learn more about growing beans and hopefully, as a result, starting to grow organic dry beans in our project region and maybe beyond. I know we have people on all the way from the West Coast. Okay, so this is the third class, and we'll have an additional class on Friday. And then we don't have one on Monday, do we, Ivy? I'm trying to remember now.
Nope, taking a break for
holiday. And one final class at the end of the week. So we're closing in on the course. And today we're going to be learning about weed control in dry beans with Matt Ryan from Cornell, and also joined. Remember last week we did a research roundup. We're going to do that again with Eric is joining us today. And he's going to talk about the inter-row mowing research that we've done through the EcoBean project. So we have action-packed day today. So as in the past, if you need CCA credits, the QR code will go up at the end of the webinar, so you can scan that. The Certified Crop Advisor credits, just as clarification, are for those folks that hold Certified Crop Advisor certificate, and you have to get continuing education credits. So that certainly isn't everybody in class, but for those of you that are CCAs, you will get one credit for today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ivy to introduce our speaker and anything else we need to do before we jump into the day.
All right. Thank you, Heather. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on our third class. So like Heather mentioned, today we're going to focus on weed control in dry beans. And our guest speaker is Dr. Matt Ryan from Cornell University. So Matt is a professor in the School of Integrative Plant Science and is also the principal investigator at the Cornell Sustainable Cropping Systems Lab. So we're going to hear his presentation here in just a second. And then as you're listening and watching, think of your questions. Feel free to put those in the chat as we watch, but then we will have some time following Matt's presentation to answer your questions before we go into our research roundup with Eric. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing so we can watch our presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Ryan, and I am a professor at Cornell University in Central New York. Today, I'm going to be talking about weed control in organic dry bean production. To start off, I think it's helpful to remember why we should be caring about weeds. So first, weeds compete with crops for resources. We know that they can reduce yields and reduce profitability. Weeds can also make harvesting more challenging. So by having fewer weeds, you can save on labor and having fewer weeds just tends to make things work better when you're growing crops. So my background is really in ecological weed management. So I want to tell you a little bit about ecological weed management as really a framework to be thinking about managing weeds on your farm and improving weed control, especially in organic dry bean production. So when I talk about ecological weed management, I'm really talking about the proactive and strategic use of complementary control tactics based on knowledge of weeds and how they interact with their environment. So this is a different approach than how most people think about weeds. And so instead of reactive management aimed at killing emerged weed seedlings, ecological weed management tends to focus more on reducing selection for adapted species, increasing crop competitiveness, and reducing weed reproduction. So some additional background information here. If you're not familiar with this book, Manage Weeds on Your Farm, A Guide to Ecological Strategies, I strongly encourage you to check it out. It's an excellent resource, and a major theme in this book is that by understanding the biology of different weed species, you will be better able to exploit their weaknesses. So for the remainder of the talk, I'd really like to focus on some steps that I think can be really useful to consider when trying to improve weed management. And these different steps are really just a collection of ideas from different sources that I've picked up over the years. So to start off, first, I think it can be really helpful to develop a plan, right? To have a whole farm management plan for dealing with weeds. And so as we go through these different steps, this is really the collection of these steps is really the basis of a good weed management plan. So number two is to conduct a comprehensive weed assessment. And what I mean by that is going out and knowing what species you're dealing with and knowing where they are on your farm. Step number three is to clean up problematic fields. If you are going into and planning to crop a certain area, it may pay off to um, do some work to bring that field under control in terms of any weed problems that might be present. The fourth step is to diversify your crop rotation, and this is really a foundational component of a good weed management plan. And number five here is to make cultural weed management practices work for you. Number six is to fine tune your weed control tactics. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Number seven is to really be ready to go out and rescue infested crops. Number eight is to prevent weed seed rain, prevent weed reproduction, and also to promote weed seed purgation. Okay. Number nine is to strengthen sanitation and also to prevent introductions, prevent bringing new weed species onto your farm, and also prevent the bringing in weed seeds through either manure or cover crop seed. So, and then of course, number 10 here is to monitor, make sure you're thinking about these different steps. You're keeping an eye on weeds, weed populations, weed communities, and then adapt as needed. So these steps here really serve as the basis for the discussion that we're going to have today. So when we think about, yeah, this comprehensive weed assessment, yeah, really thinking about, where on your farm are the weed problems. So, are certain fields problematic, or perhaps even certain areas within a field may be more problematic than others. So, it's good to know these different locations on your farm and to go out and basically create a weed map to understand, where these troubling areas are. So, and then the second part of this is really trying to understand when. When do you see these different species out there? Is it in the summer? Is it in spring or fall? And so by having an understanding of where and when, that's a really good start here but you also want to understand which species you have. So proper weed identification can be really important here, again, in terms of understanding the biology and being able to exploit those weaknesses that we were talking about earlier. Again, a big part with ecological weed management is really preventive management and trying to understand why. What are the conditions or really the root cause of the weed problems that you're dealing with? So for different weed species, if you are unfamiliar perhaps with some of the species that you're dealing with, there are tools out there that you can use. So here are just a couple of apps that you can download on your smartphone that can help you identify different species that may be occurring uh, on your farm. Um, Cleaning up problematic fields. One way that you might be able to do that is through the use of a false seedbed. For organic farmers that are using mechanical weed management, this can be really effective. So before planting your crop, one approach is to go out, do some tillage a little bit earlier, fit that soil, create that seed bed, let weeds emerge, come up, and then terminate them while they're still small like that. And so um, one key with using a false seedbed approach like this is to have multiple flushes. And when you're having multiple flushes, you want to go in with a light cultivation tool like a field cultivator, but you want to do those multiple passes at progressively shallower depths so that you're not bringing up new weed seeds to the soil surface. If you have a really problematic area, perhaps that is infested with perennial weeds, you might consider taking that field out of production. And of course, I know that can be a difficult decision, but in some cases, taking land out of production, cleaning it up, you'll be in much better shape than fighting with weeds all summer long. So um, if you are trying to manage Canada thistle or other perennial weeds, having a prolonged period where you are using a bare fallow, just basically an extended fall seedbed, can be very, very helpful. I've seen this firsthand and have some experience with this and know that it can be very beneficial to, yeah, really cleaning up weedy areas, weedy fields. So, another one of those steps is to diversify your crop rotation. And so here's a quote from the late Chuck Moeller from his book, Crop Rotations on Organic Farms, also available for free through SARE. But yeah, rotation planning is a key way that organic growers can substitute brain power for labor and purchased inputs. So I really appreciate that, Chuck, that quote from Dr. Moeller there. And this is just a photograph of diverse rotation of soybean, oats, corn, and wheat, right? As part of the book, there were some guidelines that I think it's always good to be thinking about here. And what you're looking at is just a diagram from that book highlighting the crop rotation at the Martins Farm in Penn Yan, New York. And so Klaus Martins is one of our organic farmer advisors and was highlighted. And this is more of a, I'd say, a simplified rotation. I know that the Martins also uh, have managed quite a number of acreage, quite a large acreage, and they have a number of different crops that they grow, but this is sort of a baseline. And so, in terms of those rotation guidelines that is covered in that book, Crop Rotations on Organic Farms, you really want to be thinking about alternating different crops that are planted at different times. So alternate spring and early summer planted crops with fall planted crops. So that can be really helpful in terms of keeping weeds off balance and avoiding the selection for adapted species. You can also be thinking about alternating crops that are planted in narrow rows with crops that are planted in wide rows. So that can be really helpful. And then crops that are harvested differently. So if you do have the ability to grow forage, for example, if you are a dry bean producer, that can be very beneficial in terms of really knocking back problematic weed species. Of course, Anytime that you can get in and graze fields, that can also be very, very beneficial. So here's another quote. Yeah, this one is from Klaus Martins, organic grain crop farmer in central New York. And here he's saying that each crop should be grown after its most suitable predecessor. And so the idea here is that different crops will do different things to the soil and maybe yeah, more or less beneficial to um, yeah, certain conditions and certain weed species. So you really want to be thinking about strategically setting up your crop rotation so that it can work for you and contribute to weed management. So another yeah, foundational part of a good weed management plan, in addition to having a diverse crop rotation, are cultural weed management practices. And what I mean by cultural weed management practices is really any tweak to your management system that increases the competitive ability of the crop relative to the weeds, right? So there are some examples here, like selecting varieties with early vigor or bushy growth, delaying planting in the spring until the soil warms up and your crop seedling really jumps out of the ground and can be very competitive. That early vigor, very, very important. And then you can also be thinking about applying fertilizer, manure, or starter fertilizer in organic production or even irrigation close to the crop instead of broadcasting it or using sprinkle irrigation where you're watering weeds or fertilizing weeds between the row. Um, One thing that I tend to work on quite a bit in my lab at Cornell is crop seeding rate as a cultural weed management practice. And I have seen over the years in a number of different crops that this can be a very useful tool for organic farmers. So just an example of this, here you're looking at some organic no-till planted soybean and we were looking at planting at different seeding rates here. So you have a low seeding rate, 80,000 seeds per acre, compared to a very high seeding rate of 315,000 seeds per acre. And you can see that crabgrass, that large crabgrass in the low seeding rate, where that crabgrass was suppressed by the soybean crop, that competitive soybean crop, in the plot that had the higher seeding rate. So cultural weed management practices, again, really important component of a good weed management plan. And of course, when we think about ecological weed management, there's this concept of the many little hammers that was introduced by Eric Gallant and Matt Liebman back in 1997. And so the idea here is that with cultural weed management practices, really, this combination of tactics that may be weakly effective when applied on their own can provide effective suppression when they're combined. So, yeah, I want to be thinking about when to manage. I know with organic weed management, a lot of times farmers are relying on mechanical tools, and that can be very effective. But timing is going to be really important with mechanical weed management. So uh, just have a couple photographs here, just highlighting the white thread stage for summer annual weeds. This is really when they're just starting to germinate and right as they are emerging. So um, I've known a lot of farmers that say if you're on the tractor and you can see weeds in the field, you've already lost the battle. So this is really happening just as they're emerging, just as they're starting to come out. But again, if they're already out of the soil, that is past that white thread stage. Stage is really key because it's a very vulnerable stage. It's a key time to manage weeds because you can go through the field with a tine weeder or a rotary hoe in this photograph. You can go through the field very quickly and drastically reduce the weed population. And then, again, this is because weeds at this stage are very sensitive to the environment. They're sensitive to these, yeah, soil moisture, temperature, pathogens, yeah, barriers and toxins, right? So white thread stage, keep in mind, really critical stage for mechanical weed control. Next stage here is the seedling stage, and this is when they are already up and out of the soil. You can see some true leaves, perhaps, with your different weed species. Also, a stage when weeds are quite vulnerable, and so interrow cultivation at the seedling stage can be effective. Still very sensitive to the environment, but this is getting very close to the point when you're getting into some potential for yield loss and also potential for these weeds when they get to the seedling stage to be a little bit more difficult to control. So with mechanical weed management, like I said, timing is critical. So you want to be thinking about making sure that you have mechanical weed management as part of your plan and that you are building in time, not only to do the operation, but also time to adjust the settings and make sure that you're getting the action that you want to see with your cultivator. Of course, we should always be keeping our tools well maintained, keeping our knives sharp, and yeah, and just really thinking about how we can get the most out of our cultivators. I know some people, some farmers have invested in camera guidance systems, and I've talked with a number of farmers who have made that switch, and I'm always surprised when I hear that how well the camera guidance systems are working for organic farmers. I hear that reports of farmers saying that camera guidance pays for itself in a very short period of time. And some of the main benefits are that it reduces fatigue, right? You can go through the field and cultivate greater acreage without being tired and without being exhausted from looking over your shoulder, and certainly can help avoid some of the problems that are uh, known to be associated with mechanical weed management. So in this photograph here, this is Tor Oshner, a local organic grain crop farmer, and he was showing off some his cultivator to some students that I brought out to his farm. You're looking at some finger weeders on the back, also some different components that he has on his cultivator that he was trying out. So this cultivator that you're looking at here, it is equipped with camera guidance. And so you can see the different parts there. And so there's a sensing camera, there's a side shifter that will move the cultivator to the side based on where it is, so that you can get very close to the row and get some of those weeds that might traditionally be missed with a standard cultivation tool. Uh, so I'm really excited about camera guided cultivation equipment. I know that it is an investment and it may not be appropriate for smaller scale production where you just don't have the ability to invest in such equipment. Um, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I think for larger operations, it's something that is definitely worth considering. Uh, so we've been talking about mechanical weed management, and of course, mechanical weed management can be very effective, especially when you have good conditions, right? But we don't always have good conditions, and um, for example, this past year in central New York, we had a very wet spring. Here's some newspaper news articles about the conditions, and so it was a very challenging year, especially for mechanical weed management with organic farmers, because not only were crops delayed, but once they were in, really were locked out of the field and did not have the ability to cultivate at the right time for good weed management. So in certain situations like this, where you know that mechanical weed management may be less effective, may be more challenging, there are some other tools that organic farmers can use. For example, flame weeders. I don't personally have as much experience with flame weeding as I do with mechanical cultivation, but I know some organic farmers really rely on flame weeding, and certainly you can go out in situations with a flame weeder when the soil is a bit wetter, then you would want to want it to be if you were using mechanical cultivation and get very good weed control. The idea here with flame weeding is not that you're combusting the weeds, you're not setting them on fire, but you're going over with a burst of heat and you're really trying to burst the cells, right, within the leaf tissue. And so the photograph in the upper corner there is an example of the fingerprint test where you can squeeze a leaf, and if you see the outline of your fingerprint, that's when you know that you're having good control, right? And so in that leaf there, you know it's not crispy, it's not burned. It just went through for a very, very short period of time at a very high amount of heat, and it burst the cells within the leaf, and that's how we're getting that control there. So another tool that we're exploring, and that is yeah, become more popular for rescuing crops. And again, this is really um, after the period when you would be trying to target the white thread stage or the early seedling stage. But there are some rescue tools that are effective. Just know before we talk about rescue tools that the critical period, there's this idea of there's a time when you really want to um, yeah, have good weed control for reducing competition and maintaining or preserving crop yield. And with dry bean, that tends to be between 3 weeks after planting and 6 weeks after planting. So if you can keep weeds out of your field and keep any weeds that are there very small, you should be able to have some decent yields and minimize any weed crop competition. But we know that is not always possible. So rescue tools can be helpful, and there are a number of different rescue tools that are out there. Um, One that we are looking at is the Weed Zapper, and so this is yeah, electrical weed management. And so basically, on our tractor we have a large boom, and on the back behind the tractor we're towing behind a generator. So the generator produces an electrical current that flows through the boom, and um, and as the boom comes into contact with weeds that are above the crop canopy, it kills them. So there's a short video here. I'm not sure if this is going to play, but you can see driving over these soybeans in this case, and trying to kill weeds that are above the canopy. So the way that this works is that it really depends on a height differential between the weeds and the crop canopy. If your boom drops down and hits your dry bean plants, you will kill them. So you need to be careful with this. This piece of equipment is a bit more expensive than perhaps some other tools that are available, but um, for for weeds that are growing above the canopy, it can be very effective. And I know certainly a lot of farmers in the Midwest are investing in weed zappers and are reporting success with them. So another idea, as part of those 10 steps for weed control is to limit weed seed production. And so certainly rescue tools like the weed zapper that can not only help in terms of cleaning things up, but it also helps reduce weed seed production, and it can help with harvest ease, being able to get through the field a little bit faster when you're going to harvest your crop. Another tool, another technology that I'd like to talk about here is the seed impact mill. So this work really originated in Australia, and so there is this tool down there, the Harrington Weed Seed Destroyer. And the idea here is that as you're harvesting, you're going to put the chaff from your crop as you're harvesting and put it through in a hammer mill and crush the weed seeds. So that original design was a tow behind cart that had a hammer mill, and so now there are a couple of different pieces of equipment that you can actually put on your combine. So this is a photograph of the ReadyCop um, seed impact mill. So this attaches to the back of John Deere combines, and it does the same thing. It as the chaff, as you're harvesting your crop, the crop seed, crop grain goes into the hopper, and then all the chaff comes out the back. But before it goes out the back, it goes through this impact mill and it crushes the seed. So I also want to talk a little bit about preventing, weed seed production in general. So this photograph here, you're seeing some common ragweed, and this is in a field after spring wheat. And so in this case, this farmer um, let these weeds grow and then they produce seed. If you have the time, and I think it can certainly be worth the trouble, but it may be beneficial instead of letting those seeds grow and produce those weeds grow and produce seeds, it may be beneficial to go out and mow them. So we have a common ragweed here, and then we have hedge bindweed, which is a perennial weed. So the mowing may not help with the um, uh, perennial weeds like that, with hedge bindweed, but can be very beneficial in terms of managing annual weeds. So, cover crops are another tool that can be really useful for helping suppress the growth of weeds when you're not growing a cash crop, right? Cover crops can also create habitat for beneficial insects such as weed seed predators. What you're looking at here is different carabid beetles, and these beetles, these invertebrates, they will eat weed seeds just like grasshoppers, just like mice or birds. And so, one approach to be thinking about is improving the habitat quality so that you can get these weed seed predators working for you and helping draw down weed populations. The one of the last things I wanted to be talking about here is just preventing immigration, preventing the introduction of weed seeds and new species on your farm. So some tips here are just one, avoid planting contaminated crop seed, right? So check your seed tags, make sure that there are no noxious weeds in there. Um, Make sure there are no new species that aren't on your farm if there are weed seeds in your cover crop seed or in your cash crop seed. You want to be also cleaning equipment. You know, certainly cleaning off equipment if you're going from a weedy field into a cleaner field. Make sure that you're not just bringing all those weed seeds with you when you're moving equipment around. You want to watch out for contaminated compost. The photograph there is some morning glory that was growing on a compost pile. And so, again, you want to be careful. You want to manage the weeds in your compost piles or your manure piles. Make sure that they're not just adding seeds to those sources of soil amendments or soil fertility there. You want to be, yeah, also keeping the edge of your fields clean, and that can also be quite helpful in terms of preventing immigration and new species. So that's really it here. Again, I want to just yeah, flash up the 10 steps. And so I'm hopeful that this was interesting to you and that you may have picked up some new ideas for improving weed management on your farm. I am always happy to talk, so please reach out to me. Look forward to hearing from you and yeah, doing a better job with weed management in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt, for putting that together and sharing all that information on weed control. I saw there was a couple of questions you had answered during the presentation. I'll just remind folks, if you have any questions, we have some time now. We can answer those. I'll just reiterate what Rebecca had asked in the chat about approximate cost. And Matt, you had said starting from perhaps $20,000 to $30,000 for depending on the equipment. If there was any farmers or people on the call who have invested in weed control equipment, we'd be curious to hear if anyone has any insight on prices. I know Seth was on Monday, and he was excited to hear about the inter row mower. So I know I'm interested to see that coming up here in a minute. So and
Yeah,
then
thanks, Ivy.
yep.
Yeah, the costs I put in there, the 20 to 30,000. I was looking online and yeah, for the a used row guard, Einbach row guard, I see it going for about 30,000, and that's just the side shifter unit. So yeah, the cost may be higher if you're buying brand new. I don't know if Heather or other people have thoughts on this or people that have experience with it, but yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen any in action around here yet, but there's definitely a lot of interest. So yeah.
Mhm. Someone, let's see, finger weeders and side knives. Have those been effective?
I think they can be effective. Yeah, certainly finger weeders. We typically don't use finger weeders at our research farm for um, a lot of our inter-row cultivation. I know other farmers that really like them, and being able to get close to the row and yeah, take care of some of the weeds that yeah may be more problematic. Yeah, right close to the row. Um, I think finger weeders have come a long way, and there are different styles or strengths of the finger weeder. So, like with any cultivation tools, yeah, you want to be testing them out and really making sure that you're getting that action that you're looking for. Take time to set it up and go through and test it out, right? So,
Hmm. And
yeah.
for the flame weeders, um, though, can those reach in the rows themselves in addition to, kind of going above the canopy, or are you looking pretty much exclusively at targeting those weeds above your crop rows?
Yeah. So with flame weeding, yeah, this is a tool approach that again I do not have as much experience with. A lot of our research is focused on reducing tillage and using mulch, and so flame weeding is not as compatible when you have mulch that can catch on fire. But from what I understand, have some crops are fairly tolerant. Like you can flame and get weeds right in the row with corn. With dry beans, I'm not totally sure. I think I'd be a little bit more concerned about yeah damaging your beans if you're going over and trying to get weeds in the row. I don't know if other people have experience with that, but yeah, certainly flame weeding can be useful. I don't know a whole lot of farmers in New York anyway that are flame weeding. It tends to be a little bit more popular, I think, out in the Midwest. So
Hmm.
yeah.
I'm just trying to see. I see a couple more questions we can get to before we have Eric give his presentation. Let's see. Rebecca was curious if you have any modifications or different suggestions for those doing medium to small scale bean production.
Yeah, different suggestions for medium to small scale. So I think with medium to small scale, you can pay attention to your fields a little bit more, perhaps than maybe if you were managing larger acreage. So certainly going out and trying to prevent weed seed production in the year before going into dry beans, right? And so, a lot of times when we are doing long-term experiments in the same field, we see that weed problems are directly tied and correlated to the weediness of the previous crop. And so, if you can keep the crop clean, um, in the year before going into dry beans, that should help a lot in terms of reducing problems. And so that can be perhaps a little bit easier to go out and hand weed or hand rogue weeds that are large or that are about to go to seed and get them out cleaned up, perhaps at a smaller scale than if you're managing larger acreage. So, um, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of expertise here, so I feel like we can have a really good conversation if we had more time. But again, happy to talk and follow up separately if people have questions. Feel free to email me or reach out. So
Mhm. And I think I people, if they have questions, can keep putting them in the chat, and we'll keep compiling those. I think we want to have Eric give his research roundup, and then that way we'll circle back at the end and have folks ask questions for the two of you. So, Eric, if you want to start getting your slides pulled up, I will just briefly introduce you. So for our research roundup today, we have Eric Youngerman, who's a graduate student at Cornell University, working with Matt Ryan at the Sustainable Cropping Systems Lab. And so we're going to learn about in-row mowing and when to mow. So it looks like we can see.
All right. So what are you seeing right now? Are you seeing the main title page or are you seeing my display notes?
I see your main slides and it looks good.
Perfect. All right. Great. Thanks. For the sake of time, I'm going to try getting through this relatively quickly. But hi, everyone. My name is Eric Youngerman. I'm a graduate student and researcher here in the Sustainable Cropping Systems Lab. As Ivy just said, I'm going to be presenting on some data or some field work that I've been able to help lead over the past amazingly 3 years. And so it's called When to Mow, Improving Weed Control in Organic No-Till Dry Bean. So one big question is why organic no-till? And so what are some of the benefits of rolled rye organic systems? And so I was hoping Matt in his presentation might have talked a little bit about the rolled crimped cover crop system because that's primarily all of the work that we do. Or all of the field work that we do is within these systems. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with it, it's when we will, particularly right in the dry bean system, it's when we grow a cereal rye cover crop in the fall, and then we terminate it in the spring, and we plant directly into that. And so some of the benefits from that are that that cereal rye cover crop will protect against late season soil erosion and improve soil health, water infiltration, and moisture retention. Someone earlier asked about improving habitat for seed predators. There's some beliefs that even having this rolled crimped mat might improve upon that. And most importantly, especially for this talk, is it's been shown to suppress weeds. So sometimes you get excellent suppression in these rolled crimp systems. So this is an image from some of the work that I'm presenting on. That is this is in Wisconsin, and here you can really see that there are essentially no weeds peeking through the inter-row zone. So the area between the dry bean rows, and this can be attributed to the amount of cereal rye biomass that you have, and it can also be attributed to your weed seeds soil bank. And so on the other side of this, though, you can also have terrible weed suppression, where you might have an okay stand of cereal rye, but based off of like the amount of biomass or the seed bank, you can have weeds really breaking through that mulch. So this is another field site from this project that I'm reporting on, and this is in the Hudson Valley region. You can still make out the rows of beans, but the foxtails just kind of overwhelmed this system this year. So we like this system because of the benefits. So the rolled crimp system because of the benefits that you get from that mulch. How do you maintain that mulch while also reducing your weeds? So one way and one thing that we are excited about is through mowing. So in particular, this unit, the Artec Inter-Row Mower. So it's a tool for controlling weeds without disturbing the soil. So this mower, it's made from manufactured in Canada. You have 5 rotary mowers. It's front tractor mounted. You can cut weeds between 2 to 6 inches in height. And most importantly, you're minimizing your soil disturbance. So you can maintain that mulch and all the benefits from it while also controlling your weeds. One operational constraint is that once your cash crops, in beans in this case, get too large, you don't want to damage them. So we thought this was really cool. There's been some previous work by this lab in soybean, and we wanted to test it out in dry bean. But just beforehand, I want to show, and I hope this works, a video of the in-row mower in action in a dry bean field. As you can see, it's mowing between the rows. So you can mow 4 rows, and that weedy patch was actually, we planted it. The mulch was doing a pretty good job here. And so when we're talking about in-row mowing, that's what we're talking about. So we said, cool, this is great. Let's design an experiment that tests how the timing of this can actually impact our wheat crop competition and our bean yields, and perhaps also reduce our weed seed production. So we designed an experiment with 4 treatments. Simply put, it was an early mowing treatment, a late mowing treatment, an as-needed mowing treatment, and a no mowing treatment. All of our mowing events, the early mowing treatment, where we had a weediness threshold of 50% or more of the weeds within a plot had to reach a height of more than 8 inches. The early mowing treatment was meant to target weed crop competition, what Matt was talking about earlier, that period where you want to have no weeds. So V2 to V4, or I think he said 3 to 6, 4, no, maybe it was 3 to 5, 3 to 6 weeks after planting. We had a late mowing event that was meant to target your weed seed production, and then an as needed mowing that kind of combined both. And then anytime that we had that threshold of 8 inches or higher of 50% of weeds, we'd mow again as well.
Hey, Eric.
And
Sorry to interrupt you. I think we're 1 slide behind for some reason. Like
well, that's annoying.
we're seeing experimental design mowing timing. Is that the slide that you're on, or are you on the one after that?
No, I'm on experimental design mowing timing.
Okay, good. And maybe we were just behind earlier.
I think it was just after the
Oh.
video it caught up.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
No,
cool.
no worries. Glad we're caught up now. I wanted to check.
Thanks. All right, so we're on objectives and hypotheses, correct?
I think it might just be lagging because we're still there. We go. Now we're on objective and hypotheses.
Okay, I'll slow it down. So the objective and hypotheses of this experiment, or the design of this experiment, was just to really determine how different mowing timings could influence weeds and crop performance. And we hypothesized that in-row mowing in all of our treatments would reduce our weed biomass. We also hypothesized that early and as-needed mowing would maintain or increase our dry bean yield. And then we also finally hypothesized that late and as-needed mowing would reduce weed seed production. So what's really exciting about the EcoBean project, and I don't know if this was already mentioned earlier on, is that this was it's a community of researchers from across 4 states. So we had 5 research sites in the Northeast and also Wisconsin. So we have a lot of environmental variables or variation. And so we have typical experiments usually only have a couple of years of site years of data. This one has 15 site years across 4 states. And then also tying that back to one of the drivers of perhaps what could be causing this variation in weeds has to do with our mulch biomass at the time of planting. And so just to give an idea of how much variation occurs, this is our variation. This is our average mulch biomass per field from 2023. And then we'll add our 2024 data. And then we'll add our 2025 data. And so we have a lot of variation. And in some sites, or just to keep in mind, when we want adequate weed suppression, a paper from 2011 by none other than Matt Ryan highlighted that we should have about 4,500 to 7,100 pounds per acre of mulch biomass or cover crop biomass at rolling. So in addition to this, though, we also know that your weed seed bank can determine your weediness. So we were concerned that what happens if we design this experiment and we don't end up having any weeds, which also does happen. We have really good years. So we simulated weed pressure using surrogate weed species. And these were small 10 by 10 foot plots. You can see a picture of it here. You can see the mustards just highlighting. And we tried to have a nice, it was a mix of 3 different plants. three different species with the idea that we were trying to use them as proxies for other common weeds. Similarly, or not similarly, but in addition, we also wanted to measure seed rain because this is what we were interested in. And we figured that mowing would be a good opportunity to reduce your seed rain production. So just wanted to share that we used these pitfall traps. We put them in the ground at approximately the week after our final mowing event, and then we collected seeds weekly for about, depending on the site, for up to 6 weeks. And then we've been spending quite a bit of time counting and identifying those seeds. And so I'll be reporting on some of that data. So some of our results, and it's kind of exciting. In-row mowing did reduce weed biomass. So if you look here, we have our weed biomass in pounds per acre on the y-axis, and then the x-axis we have our 4 mowing treatments: no mowing, early mowing, late mowing, and as needed mowing. And I'm going to be showing a couple other slides as well, and this is going to be the same format for each slide. The only thing that will be changing is the y-axis. But what you can see here is that both our late mowing and as needed mowing reduced our weed biomass significantly when compared to our no mowing event or treatment. Early mowing did not, and in a way that makes sense because if we mowed early, we also gave those plants a chance to, those weeds that we mowed, a chance to grow back, right? And then we harvested those fully grown plants again, even though there was a slight dip in that biomass. Something that was also kind of interesting and what we're trying to get our heads around is dry bean yield was similar across all the weed management systems. So, and what I meant to highlight earlier also is these results are pooled across all 15 site years. So this is data from all 15 site years. And so the bean yields were similar across all treatments. We do see slight bumps in the early mowing and as needed mowing treatments, but they're not significantly different. And this kind of suggests that perhaps we need to kind of focus a little bit more on what our weed threshold is when we're mowing. There is a light. We're doing something right, and we just need to improve upon it. So this is still very promising, and we're still excited by this tool. Now, also, what is quite cool, or what I find really cool, is that the in-row mowing did reduce weed seed rain. And as you can see here, the late mowing event reduced it significantly compared to the no mowing event. Oddly enough, the as needed mowing event or treatment did not when compared to the early mowing or the no mowing event, similar with early mowing. And some of this is, we think, although we still have to dive a little bit deeper, and these results are only from the first 2 years of data. I'm now still working on the final year of samples, is that the mowing might cause certain plants to send out reproductive structures at lower levels. So you might actually be promoting in certain things some seed predation or seed production. Yet to be tested. So in summary, rolled rye mulch alone sometimes can fail as for weed control. So in-row mowing provides consistent supplemental weed control within these systems. Late and as needed mowing reduces weed biomass, or can reduce weed biomass, or at least in our system or our experiment, by up to 50%. Mowing time does not reduce dry bean yield or improve dry bean yield. So hold steady. Late mowing significantly reduces weed seed rain, and in-row mowing is a practical tool to stabilize organic no-till performance across variable site conditions. So with that, I'd like to just share my acknowledgements. Everybody's lab that was involved in this, Matt Ryan's lab, Aaron Silva's lab in Wisconsin, Heather Darby's lab at Vermont, Ellen Mallory's lab at the University of Maine, and then our collaborators also at the Hudson Valley Farm Hub, Andrew Kastner and Taylor Redmond and Jeff Arnold, and of course our funding, which was already mentioned at the start of this talk. And that's it. So any questions?
Thank you, Eric, for sharing that. Yeah, so if you do have questions, we still have time. We have about 10-ish minutes for questions. And I know Matt was going through and answering some of the questions people had in the chat as the presentation was going on. Lauren had asked about additional resources for seed predators and enhancing their habitat. Matt put a couple of links in there, so if folks had interest in that, you can check those out as well. And I'm just looking
Can
through the
we
question.
load those, Ivy, onto the course website too?
Yes, yep,
So
we can. We can
so they'd
definitely.
be available there for folks.
Mhm. So let's see. I know Matt, you had answered Ben's question about time meters versus rotary hose. Do you want to talk about what timing do growers like for blind weeding dry beans?
Yeah. So happy to share my perspective on this. I feel like if you're in a weedy field, yeah, certainly going in right after planting prior to crop emergence can be beneficial. And then also after crop emergence, there is a sensitive stage with beans, with soybean and with dry bean, where right when it's emerging and it's in the VE cotyledon kind of stage there where it's in that hook stage or crook stage there. That is when you can damage your bean seedlings with blind cultivation. So either getting them before they emerge or waiting until they are up and they actually have that cotyledon leaf all fully leafed out there. So.
Thank you. And um, for Olivia's question, they were curious about mechanical cultivation tools people have had success with for later stage weeding once the plants are larger.
So yeah, mechanical cultivation, different tools, right, that are out there. So depending on the how late and the size of weed seedlings, if you're talking about weeds that just have a few true leaves in that seedling stage, yeah, like a Danish Estine cultivator with a gang of five tines, with some sweeps on it, I think, is typically what we would be using here. After that, straight shank cultivator, like the Buffalo that was mentioned in the chat, that can be really useful when you are dealing with much larger seedlings. So when you're going in for more of a rescue or when your seedlings are large and they won't be really controlled by a gang of five S time, yeah, that type of cultivator. Yeah, a high residue cultivator, straight shank like a Buffalo can be, or John Deere or Hinoker or Sukup, that can be yeah, quite beneficial to take care of larger weeds.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Just going through here to see. Someone had asked about increasing plant density for suppressing weeds, and we'll put in a plug for Friday. Adam's going to talk about his research on uh, black bean seeding rate trials. So stay tuned for that. Trying to see if there's any more questions that we want to get to. And all of this information we will put up on the course page as well. So don't worry if we're sharing links or anything. We'll make sure to upload those so people, you'll have those at a later time as well.
So I was something that came up in the last class, Matt, was about rolling rye, mowing rye. Some people were asking, like, why wouldn't you just mow this down instead of rolling it? And what were the positives and negatives there? And I'm wondering if you have anything to maybe add to that conversation, especially around weed management. Like, what does the rolling part achieve, maybe versus just mowing it?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So what we see yeah, advantages with rolling compared to mowing. so we can roll faster than we can mow, so reduce labor, reduce fuel. The mulch tends to stay in place. It doesn't drag or rake with the planter. We have slower decomposition. If you are cutting it up, you have more surface area and faster microbial decomposition. So keeping that mulch intact can be more beneficial in terms of prolonging your weed suppression later into the growing season. So those are some of the bigger issues I think with mowing versus rolling. Um, yeah, there may be other things out there. Yeah, little benefits or drawbacks to either system, but that's what I think about. Yeah. Um,
And some
Sometimes,
people were
yeah.
asking about the timing too last week. We covered it a little bit, just some people were like, how do you get this stuff to die? You know? So any advice there for folks around timing? Probably both for mowing and also rolling. Like how do you make sure it doesn't come back?
Yeah, yeah. So we're looking at going in and rolling at yeah, right in the middle of anthesis. So when you start to see anthers on your cereal rye, and the anthers start in the center of the seed head, and then they go out from the center up top towards the top and towards the bottom of the seed head. And so when they're about halfway moving up the seed head and down the seed head, so about 50% anthesis, that's the what is typically recommended for rolling and to be able to mechanically terminate your cereal rye with a roller crimper. When you're mowing, you want to make sure that you're also in a reproductive stage. We've seen rye come back when we're mowing at boot stage, so you probably want to, yeah, push a little bit further than that. It's I think that sort of depends on the year and maybe the variety and some other things there. But yeah, when you get into reproductive stages, that's when those winter annuals are less likely to recover, come back from rolling or mowing. You
Yeah.
can probably mow a little bit earlier than you can roll, but yeah, you don't want to push it too far.
Yeah. There was a lot of conversation around that last week. So or maybe it was a week before, I don't remember. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There are a couple questions from Ben and from Mark. We have seen a yield reduction in our no-till system compared to bare soil with dry bean. So Adam can also talk about that next time he did that seeding rate experiment, both in with the tilled soil and in rolled rye. And so we are seeing a little bit of a yield drag. We think that that is due to some different factors. Nitrogen, dry beans not being as strong of a nitrogen fixer as soybean, we feel like there's some tie-up and that may be contributing to the yield drag. There's another experiment, another person that was involved in this project, Maddie Hunter, who's been working with Ellen Mallory. And so she's trying to take a look at that, really understanding if there's a nitrogen limitation that's caused by the rolled crimp cereal rye. We have not done a whole lot of work looking at differences in terms of grain quality, or at least that I'm aware of. Maybe some other people, I don't know if Heather or others have thoughts in terms of any differences in quality with the rolled crimp system compared to bare soil. I know with like vegetables, that's where you can have cleaner fruit if you're have your squash, for example, on top of the mulch compared to on soil, but not as clear to me in terms of dry beans. I don't know if other people have thoughts
Yeah,
on that.
no, I would agree with that. I think Sarah Petherbridge will talk about maybe some of the disease advantages or disadvantages specifically with dry beans and this rolled mulch. But, I think anything that can keep the soil splash up probably off from plants can be helpful. But I think we know in agriculture, with every advantage, often there's some also kind of disadvantage. So it's like, balancing those things. Um, I wondered if somebody, and I know this is a little bit off like weed control topic, but just, like setting up the planner maybe to be successful with these kind of mulches, and are there any tips there? I know we had some challenges just cutting through all of this material, which probably would be maybe easier or less easy, who knows, with chopping it up, but I think that's probably an issue people have, and if there's any tips there or resources we could point to, might be helpful.
Yeah, yeah. I'll put in our soybean guide.
Yeah,
And so this is, the information here is also very applicable to dry beans. And so that's in the chat now. But we're really trying to avoid cutting the cereal rye. So we want to be going through and avoiding, trying to avoid if there's any lodging of the cereal rye. We really want to be parting it more than cutting through those stems because those stems can be quite tough. Usually, extra weight on a planter can be really helpful. Seed to soil placement and getting the seed through the mulch and into the soil has traditionally been a challenge. I feel like with newer planters that are set up for no-till with hydraulic downforce pressure, that's less of an issue. If you have an older planter, sometimes you can make great improvements just by adding a lot of weight. And then also, watching soil moisture. So sometimes cereal rye can really dry out the soil and make it very hard. And it may be better to wait for a rain and to soften up the soil. So, yeah, definitely some considerations with seed placement and planter setup. I think that can be helpful. In general, yeah, as Adam will share, yeah, we do see some advantages with going with a higher seeding rate if we're relying on mulch-based weed suppression. So, um, yeah, maybe I'll stop there.
great, thank you.
And that link you shared, Matt, folks, we'll put that on the page as well. So if you want to refer back to that later, we'll have that up also. Let's see if any last minute questions come through.
There's one about herbicides in bean seed, and yeah, the herbicides themselves would not accumulate in the bean seed. And I think the point is being made that you can find bean seed from a conventional market, but not always available organic. And I think there is limited production of organic beans in general. And so you likely aren't maybe going to find everything the same available from organic and conventional. Seth was on last week, who's a farmer here in Vermont, and he was saying, especially for some of the heirlooms and less common varieties, it's really difficult to obtain seed certified organic or otherwise. So, but that has nothing to do with herbicides accumulating in the seed. That would not be happening. But good question.
And I don't know, Shannon, if you want to share our slides for the end. If folks do have more questions, we have a couple more minutes here. I don't know if Matt or Eric, if either of you have any last minute things you want to add. We appreciate you taking the time, both of you, to present and share what information you have. It's been really helpful. So here's the CCA credits. I don't know if Matt, if you want to jump in or say anything.
No, it's just great being able to get together. Yeah, big thanks to Heather and Ivy and Susan for putting this on and yeah, creating an opportunity to share with all of you. Like I said earlier, yeah, very happy to talk. If people have questions and want to follow up, feel free to email me. My email address is mryan@cornell.edu. And yeah, we can tell you more about our research. I am personally very excited about interrow mowing and the work that Eric is doing, and so yeah, I think you'll see more of that in the future. But yeah, just want to say thanks, and yeah, look forward to hearing from people if you have questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Shannon had put in the chat a bit earlier on, someone was wondering how long the course page was going to be available. Once we wrap up the course, it's going to live on that extension site, so you don't have to worry about losing any of the information. We're going to make that available for folks. So all this information will be up there for you. So this is if you are in need of CCA credits, you can scan the QR code here, or Shannon put the information in the chat. If you need to do it that way, she can help get you your CCA credits. And I think if you go to the next slide, we'll just highlight what's coming up. And so we do ask if you have time, we have a short survey here. If you could take that just after the session is over, that's really helpful for us. And the link will also be on the course page under module 3. So you can find it there as well. And then with our last couple of minutes, we'll just highlight what's coming up on Friday. So our Friday class is going to be all about dry bean pests and disease management with Sarah Pethiebridge from Cornell University. So it's going to be a lot of good information there. There will be one integrated pest management CEU available for that class. And then our research roundup on Friday is going to be with Adam Sharifi. We talked about his work during this session, higher seeding rates in black beans to look at weed suppression in organic no-till production. So stay tuned for that. And then we take Monday off for the holiday, and then we end on a Friday with Seth Johnson, who's a farmer here in Vermont, and he's going to talk about all things dry bean harvest and cleaning. So we still have a lot of good information to come. I'll just thank our speakers again. If folks have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. And if you need any help getting your CCA credits or any questions about the course in general, always feel free to reach out via email and we can get you whatever information you need.
Great. Thanks, Ivy. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you Friday.
Thanks, everyone.